with an important debate that's been brewing. Will India be able to create enough jobs? Economists at Citigroup in a report said that the country's unemployment, it's poised to rise even if the economy grows at 7% annually as projected. However, the Indian government, it's refuted those claims and alleged that the Citi report, it failed to consider the positive trends and comprehensive data from official sources. In a statement that was released on Monday, India's Ministry of Labour and Employment claimed that Citi's authors ignored the positive trends and extensive data from official sources. The Indian ministry statement said that the Asian country has created over 80 million jobs between 2012 and 2022. According to the statement, there are promising trends for the future in the manufacturing industry, the service sector, infrastructure development, and new opportunities in areas like the gig economy. Economists Samiran Chakrabarti and Bakar Zaidi of Citi had earlier estimated that India can only generate 8 to 9 million jobs a year at its present rate of economic growth. But to accommodate the influx of young workers in the coming decade, the country will require approximately 12 million jobs a year. However, according to the government, India has generated more jobs than the number of people seeking employment. The Ministry of the Labour Force participation increased to 58% in 2023 from just under 50% in 2018. The government in a statement said, and I'm quoting here, contrary to the report which suggests a dire employment scenario, the official data reveals a more optimistic picture of the Indian job market. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Mithali Nikor, economist and founder of Nikor Associates, live from Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. I say this all the time. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Good morning. Our pleasure as well.
Good morning. Now, of course, Citigroup's economist said that unemployment in India that is poised to rise even if the economy grows at a healthy 7% as is projected widely. What's your take on this report?
So I think, first of all, it's very interesting that Citigroup has not used Government of India data actually in order to make these calculations. And this is something, we've been observing as a trend, not only with Citi, but with a lot of international organizations. There are some standardized, data publications which are done by, say, for example, the International Labour Organization and, other international data management firms. And often, they are based on projections, and standardized matrices, but they don't actually take into account the real data that is being generated by the periodic labor force participation survey, because the PLFS is very new. It only began in 2017-18 and started giving annual data on India's unemployment situation only in 2017-18. Whereas, the projections that these entities have been using have been in place for several decades. So I think because of these methodological differences and, these differences in methodology, which are standardized and established in some of the international organizations, we get estimates that are, often quite different from each other. So I do think that, there is some technical issues, which is giving rise to these differing conclusions. But I think that at the end of it, we have to take into account the ground reality.
Right, absolutely. In fact, what you mentioned, I was just going to come to this. The Indian government did point to official records to rebut the claims. Now, what do you think happens going forward?
So I think going forward, what the government of India is doing is absolutely right. At the end of the day, we are improving our data systems. So of course, we would want global organizations to take our data systems and real data that we are able to provide into account when they are making projections. At the end of the day, a lot of times the size of India's informal economy, for example, which generates a lot of the employment, often gets missed in the international organization projections, whereas the periodic labor force participation survey for the first time attempts to even understand the size of the informal job market by talking to people and by also estimating the size of those who are in self-employment. Who might be doing small enterprises, who might be doing their own work. So I think it's very important to go by the Government of India data because it's far more comprehensive, and for international organizations to devise systems to use this data.
All right, well, Ms. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us on World Business Watch with your insights on this. Always a pleasure to have an enriching discussion with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.